Andrés sat on the couch with his wife, who silently stared at the ceiling. He scrutinized her. She had changed a lot in the last 2 years, becoming so bony and ugly that he had started telling her so without any reservations. Andrés was a successful businessman, and his wife, as he used to say in front of his friends, sat on his lap and hung her feet. Luz Maria, don't you want to stop grieving? 2 years have passed, there's no way to get it back, you have to come to terms with it. How can you say that? It's our son. Luz Maria, but it's been 2 years, it's time to get back to life, you can't torture yourself like this. Look at yourself. Where is that cheerful Luz Maria that I loved so much? Don't tell me anything. If you don't feel the pain of losing your son, we're on different paths. I don't think you ever loved him. What are you saying? I understand that the death of a child is something terrible. But you have to move on, whatever happens. You don't understand anything, the woman cried again. Andrés looked at her and hugged her. Of course, it hurt him too, but a lot of time had passed. His son, a handsome 20-something, had died in the mountains. He and his friends were climbing rocks, he didn't grab on well. The parents resisted accepting the news because they didn't find him immediately. The search operation took a long time, they found him after a week. At that moment, an avalanche came down and covered all traces. Since then, Luz Maria has never been herself again. She had forgotten what life was and spent her days looking at photos of her son and crying. He was an only child. Luz Maria had forgotten her husband, her friends, everything. She only lived with memories of her son. Today marked 2 years since Pablo's death. The woman sat on the couch and went over the memories she had in her head. The good moments of their lives came to mind. When Pablo was little, Luz Maria was the happiest. She loved drawing and reading with him. The boy had gone to art school and was interested in football. He was a very versatile child, interested in everything. He wanted to learn everything at once, and Luz Maria loved it. She was happy to answer his questions, even if they weren't always of vital importance. The woman believed that the little one should constantly develop, and when he wanted to be a geographer, no one said a word. But it was this profession that killed him. Then Pablo thought to combine business with pleasure. He and his research team headed to the mountains, with the desire not only to work, but also to enjoy mountaineering. But fate had other plans. Luz Maria vividly remembers the day she received the call that her son had died. For her, it was a great tragedy. She had never felt so many emotions as on that day. She still hasn't come to terms with the death of her son, even though 2 years have passed. Her husband, Andrés, seemed to have accepted it. That's what Luz Maria thought. Lately, they barely speak. The man lives his life. He has a good business that brings in good income, has many friends. Andrés usually doesn't come home at night, it has become routine. Luz Maria says goodbye to him with her eyes every time he goes out at night without a word. She is not at all interested in where her husband spends his nights. At first, many friends tried to cheer up Luz Maria. They came to visit her often and tried to talk to her. Over time, they disappeared. Luz Maria had no interest in talking to anyone, much less in sharing her pain. She was very reserved and didn't tell anyone anything. It seemed that the tragedy had happened only to her, because even her husband had no right to talk about it. Luz Maria sat on the couch, caressing a photo of her son. Andrés looked at her carefully once again, took the car keys, and left. The woman followed him with her eyes and cried softly. Of course, she had always wished that her husband would treat her differently. She had dreamed that one day he would hug her and comfort her, that he would tell her that everything would be fine, but it wasn't like that. They lived different lives, even though they were under the same roof. Luz Maria's phone rang, and the screen said Mom was calling. "Hello, Mom," Luz Maria said softly. "Hello, my daughter. How are you?" "Everything's fine. Sweetheart, tomorrow I'm going to your city to do some shopping. Can Andrés take me?" I don't know, Mom. Call him yourself, you know we hardly talk. How come you don't talk to your own husband? It's that simple, Mom. They talked for a long time. Mom even said she had fallen in love again. Luz Maria just laughed. It amused her because her mother would soon be turning 80 and never cared about her age, often falling in love with older men like herself. Luz Maria's mother had been officially married 5 times, but she wasn't going to stop there. She had always said that life should be lived to the fullest until the coffin lid closed. Luz Maria didn't share such optimism. Her mother always looked at her with concern. It was clear that she was nothing like Dona Inés, Luz Maria's mother. She must have inherited all her qualities from her father, who was also always upset and burdened by something. Luz Maria looked a lot like her late father, and her mother had noticed it more than once. The days flew by. Luz Maria did her chores with sad thoughts. Andrés didn't come home today, which didn't surprise her at all. And so the sad day passed. She lay down on the cold bed and fell into a deep sleep. She dreamed of her youth, she dreamed of happy conversations around the campfire. Early in the morning, she woke up to her mother's call. She said she and Andrés were taking a walk around the city and would be home in an hour, as she had already done all her chores. Luz Maria got up from bed feeling discouraged and put the kettle on in the kitchen. She didn't feel like seeing her mother, let alone Andrés. The kettle was whistling and the woman was making sandwiches. She always made unusual sandwiches that Andrés liked so much. The bread had to be toasted and always with sauce, not butter. Then she heard the door open with a key. In the doorway were her mother and her husband, Andrés, carrying huge bags. He left them in a corner and went to wash his hands. You almost enslaved poor Andrés, Mom, Luz Maria tried to smile. Not at all, he just kindly helped me, like a true gentleman. Dona Inés valued her son-in-law very much, feeling that there simply couldn't be a better man for her daughter. Thanks to him, Luz Maria didn't need to work, even though she had been a good seamstress before. She not only sewed in a workshop, but also took orders at home. Many people liked Luz Maria's work and she had a large clientele. After her son's death, she lost everything, lost the desire to sew, and didn't want to see anyone. They sat down at the table to have breakfast. Luz Maria stared at Andrés, making it clear that she was hurt that he hadn't been home last night. Then Mom told them about her new love. The old man turned out to be 10 years younger than her. Mom talked about him as if they were 20 again. Luz Maria smiled, trying to support the conversation and her mother's emotions. She was very happy for her mother. Dona Inés looked at her daughter. As soon as Andrés left the kitchen, she asked, Luz Maria, haven't you reconciled yet? We haven't fought to make up, we simply have different views on life. He lives his life and I wait for mine to end. How can you say that? I don't understand why you are so unenthusiastic. Life goes on. You have to love yourself and believe only in good things. You will never get your son back, and you could lose your happiness too. Mom, mind your own life. Then Andrés took Dona Inés to the train station and she left for her hometown. Andrés stayed over at the house tonight. Luz Maria felt a certain discomfort because her partner wasn't going anywhere. Will you be home tonight? Why, is there something wrong? Can't I sleep at my apartment? Of course you can. It's just that I'm not used to it. Sorry, Luz Maria, but have you noticed that we've become complete strangers lately? I have, it's hard not to notice. Don't you think it's your fault? My fault? I think it's all your fault. You're always out and your lovers don't hesitate to call you when you're sleeping next to me. I'm fed up. I think you've completely lost your mind. Look at yourself in the mirror. You're an old and boring woman. I'm the one who's fed up with all of this. You should check yourself into a psychiatric hospital. They're full of mentally ill people like you, and they'll gladly take you in. How can you say those things to me? Luz Maria was frozen in shock. Andrés argued with his wife and ran away. He went to his lover. His wife annoyed him so much that he couldn't stand her anymore. The man arrived at his young lover's house very angry. She greeted him in a beautiful robe and with a sweet smile. The girl he visited was 20 years younger than him, just an ordinary student from a small town, used to having everyone pay for her. Paula had met Andrés at work a year ago. She got a job at his company and they had an affair right away. Paula quickly realized he made a lot of money and she didn't give him a break. Andrés also noticed a beautiful blonde girl and he reciprocated her feelings. For almost 6 months, he rented an apartment for her in the center of the capital, spent a lot of money on her, and Luz Maria even knew about her because she found naked pictures of her on her husband's phone. It was clear that the girl wanted to talk about something important, and she beat around the bush with Andrés. Andrés, I'm tired of being second. Why do you keep living with your wife? You promised to divorce her. Paula, everything is very complicated. Besides, you know what her condition is. Then send her to a mental hospital, let them take care of her. Paula, let's talk about this later. How much later? You keep postponing it. Paula, let me decide what to do with my wife. Early in the morning, Andrés returned home. He sat on the couch for a while and then supposedly went to work. When he arrived at the psychiatric hospital, the man quickly thought of something to tell the doctors about his wife. After listening to him, they decided to take the woman away for forced treatment. Keeping Luz Maria in a psychiatric hospital had many advantages. First, Andrés could divorce her without her approval, and second, she would not claim any part of their property. The man imagined living in his home with his young lover, and he was not interested in what would happen to Luz Maria at all. He had to pay a lot of money to have Luz Maria taken to this asylum and left there for a long time. The man asked them to try to cure her, and if it took a long time, it would be no problem. In the morning, Luz Maria was watering the balcony flowers as usual. The nurses entered the apartment and asked her to accompany them. The woman was very surprised, but did not understand what was happening. They quickly caught her and took her outside. The only thing the woman had managed to take with her was her mobile phone. She kept calling Andrés during the entire journey, but he did not answer. In fact, Andrés could see perfectly well that she was calling. He even tried to take the phone a couple of times, but his hands did not obey him. That was how Luz Maria ended up in the asylum. No one wanted to believe she was healthy, everything was paid for. They gave her sedatives that made her drowsy all the time. Luz Maria had no idea why she was here. There were strange feelings of indifference from her husband and family. It was especially strange that her mother did not call her. Andrés brought Paula home the same day. The young lover immediately decided to remodel the apartment. She absolutely disliked everything in the apartment. The man looked admiringly as she removed the curtains and hung new ones. The next day they went to buy a new sofa for the living room. Paula wanted to decorate everything to her liking. But Andrés was a little embarrassed that the young woman didn't know how to cook and they were constantly ordering food delivery. Of course, she promised to learn soon. And sometimes he surprised himself thinking that he missed the food his wife used to cook for him every day. However, he tried to push those thoughts away. Paula, he thought, was a perfect partner. Andrés started living with his young lover in his home while his wife Luz Maria suffered in a psychiatric clinic. She was constantly injected with psychotropic drugs and sedatives. The only thing she did was sleep and she was in a kind of drowsy state. One day she went to see her doctor. The woman wanted to know how long her treatment would last and why none of her family members had visited her. She had been trying to get an appointment with her doctor for a long time, but he kept saying that there was no time for these conversations. "Hello, finally I find you. They keep telling me that you are not here or that you don't have time. I want to know why none of my family members visits me. And why have they taken away my mobile phone? The clinic's rules are to take away your mobile phone. As for your family, Nobody knows why they don't visit you, maybe they simply don't know. Although your husband knows. He is the one who paid for your treatment with us. What do you mean my husband paid? He must be mistaken. Andrés couldn't do this to me. How long do I have to stay here for them to realize that I don't have mental problems? Your husband has paid for 3 months in advance, and then we'll see, the doctor replied calmly and continued with his work. Is there anything else? No, nothing. The woman left the doctor's office in tears. She couldn't imagine that her husband would do something like this to her. She felt offended. It was especially terrifying to imagine that she would have to spend 3 whole months here. For a healthy woman, everything that was happening in this institution seemed like madness. She watched the other patients in amazement. One day she wondered if there was another world with which her roommate communicated with so much emotion. Indeed, her roommate had lost her mind after her house burned down with her entire family inside. It was the kind of pain you wouldn't even wish on your enemy. Luz Maria looked at her and remembered her own problems. Sometimes it seemed to her that all her problems were nothing compared to what had happened to that woman. Yes, her son had died, but that was a long time ago. Her husband was cheating on her all the time, but compared to the death of the whole family, it was nothing. In fact, Luz Maria went through a change in this asylum. The woman had stopped lamenting that her husband was cheating on her, and all she wanted was to get out of there and get revenge on him for everything he had done. Time passed painfully long, but she waited for her moment. 3 months had passed. The husband, or rather, as Luz Maria later found out, her ex-husband, had forgotten to pay for the continuation of her treatment, and she was discharged. She walked out onto the street, and it was as if she had stepped into another world. Everything was so different. The first thing she did was go back home. She wanted to tell her husband what she thought of him. When she got to the door, she took out her keys from her purse and started to open the door, but the key wouldn't fit. Anger took hold of her, and she started ringing the doorbell, and then she heard some quick footsteps. The young lover opened the door. "Where's my husband?" she asked. "Oh, Andrés, it must be Luz Maria who's come to see you," the young woman shouted in the room. Then Andrés appeared. He had a sneering smile on his face. They couldn't really talk. Andrés kept saying that Luz Maria was not well and that the treatment needed to be repeated. "Luz Maria, take your things and leave my life," he said. Luz Maria quickly entered the apartment and started to gather her things. She was about to cry. She couldn't believe that this man had been living with another woman for a long time. She was very hurt and offended. Half an hour later, she was standing in front of the building where she had lived for many years. She looked back at the window and saw Andrés watching her. She called her mother and took the first train to her hometown. It turned out that her mother didn't know that her daughter had been locked up in a mental hospital. Even more surprising was the fact that her beloved son-in-law was behind it all. The elderly woman advised Luz Maria to take revenge on her former husband at all costs, because it was unforgivable. "But how can I get revenge on him, Mom?" Luz Maria asked. "We have to think about it. Revenge must be elegant and subtle. We cannot forgive him. Think about what is most precious to your husband." "I don't know. His job or the girl, I don't know. I have no idea. You know, daughter, I'll give you enough money to start with. You'll start sewing again, make some money, and you'll be fine. Anyway, you'll get revenge. I'm sure you will. You're so much like me." Early the next morning, Luz Maria returned to the capital. When she arrived, she rented an apartment and got to work. She made calls to old clients and offered them her services. Surprisingly, there were many people who wanted a dress made by her. The woman started working. After a month, Luz Maria was making good money. Apparently, it was the right time to get revenge on her ex-husband. During this time, she came up with a great plan. She knew Andrés' friends well, especially Felipe. They were no longer friends. Felipe had his own business and had become a competitor of Andrés. Luz Maria decided to focus on communicating with Felipe. The long years of living with her husband were paying off. She knew his business dealings well. Of course, she told Felipe about it. Before being admitted to the mental institution, Andrés wanted to buy a piece of land, a small plot on the outskirts of the city. He knew the city would soon expand, and this land would officially be part of it. The land was being sold by an old man with whom Andrés had negotiated a long time ago. He had gone to those negotiations with Luz Maria, and that was his main mistake. Luz Maria called Felipe and suggested he buy the land before Andrés could finalize the purchase because he had already paid a large deposit. Luz Maria, but how are we going to do that? I'm not Andrés. I'll take care of it. It's obvious that the old man remembers me. Well, let's try it. Felipe and Luz Maria bought the land for a very low price. Luz Maria convinced the old man that they had come on behalf of Andrés, contributing only the missing part. Felipe was now the owner of a very good plot of land, which would soon be worth 10 times more. Felipe offered to celebrate this victory and invited Luz Maria to a party where all of Andrés' acquaintances would be, including Andrés himself. Of course, Luz Maria couldn't refuse the offer. She wanted to tell Andrés the news of the land purchase in person. After talking to Felipe, Luz Maria returned to her apartment and began to prepare for the party. She knew she had to look very beautiful. She quickly called the nearest hair salon and made an appointment to have her hair done and dyed. The color came out perfect. When she returned from the salon, she sat in front of the mirror. I suppose it's time for my prettiest dress, Luz Maria said quietly and opened her closet. She had sewn a beautiful dress a year ago, but had nowhere to wear it. She had hoped her husband would invite her to a restaurant, but he never did. So the beautiful dress was stored in the closet, gathering dust. Today was finally the day. She took it out of the closet and tried it on. She admired herself in the mirror for a long time, feeling like she was 20 years younger. In the evening, Felipe picked her up at 8. They went to the party. As soon as Luz Maria entered the big hall, she saw Andrés. He was in a corner with his Paula, arguing about something. Lately, this happened frequently in his new family. Andrés was disappointed with a woman who didn't know how to do anything and had no desire to learn. They argued while moving their hands, and Luz Maria found it amusing. She was glad that her ex-husband's love life wasn't working out. Felipe took her by the arm and they went for a stroll around the hall. After a couple of minutes, Andrés finally noticed her. He couldn't stop staring at her. He didn't understand what was happening and why she was there and why she was with Felipe. He circled around them for a long time and then decided to approach. "Hello, Felipe." "Hello, Andrés," said Felipe, looking at Luz Maria, who was by his side, a little flushed. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your companion?" Andrés asked, somewhat annoyed. "I introduce you to Luz Maria, your ex-wife," Felipe said. Luz Maria looked him straight in the eyes and smiled. Her smile was very sarcastic. She squeezed Felipe's hand a little harder because she was very nervous. She still had feelings for her ex-husband, although these feelings had turned into a thirst for revenge, but they were still there. The most important thing was that she had those feelings. "If I may ask, why did you come together?" "Well, it's not forbidden. We are supposed to be divorced and we don't have to answer to each other," Luz Maria said. "Yes, you're right." "Felipe, let's dance," said Luz Maria, cheerful, and hugged the man. Andrés watched his ex-wife. She was so beautiful and unusual that for a moment he wondered if he still loved her. Paula interrupted him, who had already gotten drunk on champagne. "Paula, behave. People are watching us," Andrés began to scold his drunk partner. She paid him no attention, and he simply sat in a corner and watched Felipe dance with Luz Maria. Paula also danced next to him, constantly changing partners, but Andrés wasn't jealous. He realized how wrong he had been. Andrés abruptly got up from the table and approached Luz Maria. He grabbed her arm, but she managed to break free. "Why are you holding me like that?" Luz Maria got scared. "Let's go home. I'm very tired of these parties." "You and I are divorced. I'm not going anywhere with you." Felipe, who had stayed on the sidelines the whole time, intervened. "Andrés, she's not your wife anymore. You don't have the right to tell her what to do." "No one asked for your opinion." Andrés became even more angry. "Okay, enough. We're not friends anymore. We have nothing in common." "That's right, we're not friends anymore. Your ex-wife offered me a good deal and, of course, I accepted. We bought the land you wanted to buy, the same one that will be the new city center in a year." "How did you buy it?" Andrés' face turned pale in an instant and his eyes widened. "I helped Felipe buy the land. I wanted to hurt you, just like you hurt me when you had me committed to a mental hospital." "How could you do this to me?" "You knew it was the best deal of my life." Andrés was out of control. "I don't give a damn about what you think of me." "Luz Maria, you still love me. Let's go home. I'll forgive you and we'll be happy again." "You're not my husband anymore." Luz Maria took Felipe's hand and they left the restaurant. Andrés was left dumbfounded in the middle of the room. He had never imagined that she would get revenge like this. She had managed to take away his most precious, most desired possession. He had so many plans for this land. The man also left the restaurant, leaving his young partner dancing with the others. A couple of weeks later, Luz Maria heard the news that Andrés had left his new love, and she was very happy, without knowing why. Maybe she still loved him, or maybe that was also part of her revenge. Luz Maria has not started a new relationship yet. She devotes herself to what she loves most, dressing people in beautiful clothes. Felipe tries to court her, but so far he has not seen any reciprocity. In fact, Luz Maria has never considered Felipe as a possible suitor. She has never really liked him. But who knows, maybe it will take a little more time for Luz Maria to believe in love again. In the meantime, she dreams of becoming a famous fashion designer because it's never too late to start over.